if we could, well, the meeting is being recorded, so maybe.
I think we just unmuted.
Yeah, we just unmuted. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Start over.
All right. So Mike, could you put down your, I can't see the time here. 11:01. All right. And I will call this meeting of the Public Safety Civil Service Commission to order. Like to thank everyone for attending. We are holding this meeting in a hybrid format, so there are some people attending in person, virtually. There are a couple of guidelines we have. The meeting is being recorded, so maybe one person can speak at a time so the recording is clear. If you are occurring virtually, we'd ask you to mute yourself when you're not speaking. And if you could also state your name before you start speaking. We're going to proceed through the agenda, which is on our website. So any questions before we begin? All right, the first item is the land acknowledgement. The Public Safety Civil Service Commission acknowledges that we are on the ancestral land waters of the Coast Salish and Duwamish people and their descendants. We honor with gratitude the land and the people past and present. The next item on the agenda is introduction. Let's see. So Adelaide, why don't we start with you?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Adelaide Alderks, and I am a senior analyst with the Public Safety Exam Unit.
Hello, I'm Rachel Shoddy, and I'm also senior personnel analyst with the Public Safety Exam Unit.
I'm Phoebe Morgan. I'm a personnel analyst with the things.
I'm Joe Snowberger, also an analyst with the Public Safety Exam Unit.
I don't think this was intentional, but I'm also usually over I'm also an exams analyst. This happens to be analyst row.
I am Miranda Boyer. I am also a senior exam analyst.
I'm Teresa Jacobs, the executive assistant and not an executive.
Tom Appleby, one of the Public Safety Civil Service Commissioners.
Richard Green, I'm a Public Safety Civil Service Commissioner.
Fanaya Mays, Public Service Civil Safety Commissioner.
I'm Joe Levan in the City Attorney's Office. I'm legal counsel, one of the attorneys for the commission.
I'm Andrea Shealy. I'm the executive director for the Public Safety Civil Service Commission and also the Civil Service Commission. Sarah Butler, operations and policy advisor.
Sean Brandon, Deputy Chief, Seattle Fire Department.
Mike Nelson, Public Safety Exam Manager. I supervise all of them.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Next item on the agenda is the welcoming our new commissioner, Fanaya Mays. Welcome. We're very glad to have you here.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Would you be able to say a few words about your experience and how you came to the commission?
Yeah, so I have about, I would say about 18, 19 now years of experience in regards to just HR. My background stems from military, private service, and government. So I've worked in agencies like Washington State, King County, City of Seattle, including some nonprofit and smaller organizations as well. Very deeply rooted in anything process improvement involved. Love working and building programs for the recruitment and hiring processes. Currently working as a consultant with my own consulting firm, just kind of doing the same thing, HR consulting, strategic planning, organizational development, just creating processes for those clients. I'm also working with the Vault 89 team as one of the directors that oversees the entrepreneurship program that teaches previously incarcerated individuals how to start businesses and how to scale and be successful. It's interesting, my background started in the military, and my first duty station was the criminal investigation division within the military. So that's kind of where I got a little heart for this kind of work, but that's a little bit about me. I love the work that I do. I saw this posting, I think it was on LinkedIn, and I reached out to Andrea, just had a couple questions, and it seemed like it was a perfect match and aligned with my values, who I am as a person, and the work that I want to do and continue to serve in this capacity.
Thank you so much. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
All right. Actually, I'm going to take something a little bit out of order. I'm going to do public comment next. Is there any public comment? There seems to be no public comment. Next, I'd like to approve the minutes of our last meeting. I've looked at the minutes of the November 21st. We had a joint meeting with the Civil Service Commission, and I put those links, and they seem fine to me. So I would move that we adopt or approve those minutes of that November 21st joint meeting.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. And then I'd also review the minutes of our meeting that we also held on, and they appear to be accurate to me. So I would move that we approve those minutes as well.
Second that, or?
Yes.
Just, okay, I second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, so those are approved. Now we can go back to the department and PSCSC overview, Ms. Sheila.
Thank you. Tracy's gonna get a slide back up. So while she's doing that, this is something we did with the Civil Service Commission for their first meeting of the year, and I'd like to make it a routine that we do. We have a new commissioner joining us, thank you, Commissioner Mays. And so overview of where we are. We did some of this at our year-end review, but we've got a couple additional audience members here with us, and of course the watching and listening public. So I'll try to keep this pretty brief, but I think it's a good way to start out the year. Let's put it in the corner. Yeah. Oh, yes. It won't share. That will not share. A little mini screen showing our logo. There you go. Thank you. Oh, that's good. There we go. Thanks, Tracy. Looks like you're gonna need to scroll down in that document because you've got a PDF. Oh, you're in Teams? Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so this is just a quick roadmap. I'm mostly going to talk about a high level at our two civil service systems and the roles and functions within the commissions and within the department that houses those two commissions. Next page. Yeah, there you go. Okay. You've seen this probably before. This is the org chart for the city of Seattle. It comes from our budget legislation. And there you go. So it shows the civil service commissions. We are not, I wish this were on the side because we really are a separate branch of government than in the executive. Can you show us the whole screen there, Teresa? Thank you. Okay. So we are not, the commissions and the department do not report to the mayor, the city council, the city attorney, or the municipal branch. We're a little tiny, twig or branch of our city system, much like the Ethics and Elections Commission, which you'll see down at the bottom with us. All right, I'll go to the next slide. All right. This just names the roles. We have public safety and civil service commissioners. An executive director is the director of both of those commissions, but also for the civ department. We have our commission counsel, one of our two regular counsels here today. They're in the city attorney's office. And this describes how commissioners are appointed or elected to the commission. And we'll move on to the next slide. If any commissioners especially have any questions, please feel free to let me know.
I suppose I do have a question. Maybe this will be addressed later, but I guess it's sort of a broad question, but for that slide, we don't fall really under the chain of command here, the Public Safety Civil Service Commission, like the mayor or the city council. We're sort of our own little unique entity.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're considering business before the commission, while we technically all work for the city, are we only supposed to view this business in light of the commission and their rules? Or how do we, it seems like there's often brought up, well, this could have these impacts on the city. And I'm wondering, how does that dovetail into the fact that the commission has its rule and its work that's unique from the sort of rules and responsibilities rules that the city has? So how do we take into consideration our work, and how much of what the city is trying to do? How much does that come into what we do?
I think it comes into it a good deal. And of course, there are, you know, myriad of issues, but much like all of those other branches of government, right? The city council works with the mayor's office, works with the court to achieve the city's goals generally. And, you know, it might be helpful to think about what are the reasons that the commission, especially the public safety civil service commissions, are independent. And they're independent under state law. But the reasons are so that there is not cronyism in, that's one reason, in hiring for these very important police and fire safety, public safety positions, that the tests that are administered and the standards that candidates are held to are related to the work. Other reasons that anybody else wants to chime in on?
All governed by state law and city ordinance. So we have RCW 4108 and 4112, which governs the police and fire systems on the PSCSC side. And then SMC 408, which is the city ordinance, which kind of captures and codifies all of those things. And that's what we closely adhere to. But we still maintain independence for the reasons that, well, by law, and also for the reasons outlined.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, it's I'm sure very evident, and you already know this, but we don't operate in a vacuum. There were no police and fire departments, we would not have any work to do. This commission anyway. And then we have the very important, of course, disciplinary appeal role, which is really crucial for commissioners to, you know, remain sort of above the fray in those and in the testing function as well. So would you mind scrolling down so we can see the heading on this slide? All right, so you all are not the Civil Service Commission, but it's helpful to know what your, you know, peers are responsible for. And these big buckets sort of come from, they actually come from the code, the charter, and the rules. They have a separate set of rules. So the commissioners over there in the Civil Service Commission hear disciplinary and other types of appeals. They conduct rulemaking and political patronage, which a quick definition of that is positions in the civil service and the public civil safety service need to be appointed and promoted based on merit related to the work. They need to be competent to do the work that they are hired to do, and not be hired because they are a friend of someone, because they support them politically, because someone paid them to do a certain body of work, unless it is for wages. But it is basically to make sure that hiring is based on merit and related to the job that is to be performed. All right, and the body of work there is if there is an allegation of political patronage, the commission has the power to investigate that. And typically, I think how that would be done is to either have the executive director conduct an investigation or hire an outside investigator to conduct an investigation and determine the facts, and then potentially a decision whether an appointment should be undone or modified or left alone. All right, that commission, as well as the Public Safety Civil Service Commission, but it's really clearly called out in the Charter for Civil Service, can make recommendations to the City Council and the Mayor on the personnel system. They also jointly with the Public Safety Civil Service Commission appoint and supervise the person in my role, Executive Director. Thank you, Teresa. All right, commissioners for the Public Safety Civil Service Commission have slightly different responsibilities and many the same as well. They hear disciplinary appeals for serious discipline filed by members of the Public Safety Civil Service system. They also oversee the merit-based hiring and promotional exam program that is conducted by the many staff that we have here with us today. Thank you all for being here. And through me as well. And they also conduct rulemaking, which you all did last year and have done, I think, almost every year since I've been the executive director, at least several times. And political patronage, I wanted to just mention that, but it's the same description that I gave for the Civil Service Commissioners. Also, they appoint and supervise jointly with the Civil Service Commission, the person who does my job, the executive director. All right, we do have a commission chair for each of these two, and these are the duties. I'll read them, but they're pretty self-explanatory, I think. Feel free to correct me, Richard. Richard Green is our current chair, and he presides over commission meetings, makes rulings on parliamentary procedure, acts as hiring authority and primary supervisor for the executive director in partnership with the Civil Service Commission chair, if they choose to do it that way. And then may also sign correspondence on behalf of the commission. It isn't strictly a duty of the chair, but we have often seen the chair sort of be the chairperson for a disciplinary appeal hearing as well, although commissioners can decide that amongst themselves.
So that's a case by case basis then on a disciplinary hearing. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the sort of presumptive position is that the chair would lead it, but if for some reason they couldn't, we could work it out that someone else would do that. All right, so sorry for the tiny font. The executive director does a lot of things, and this is not an exhaustive list, but I am the manager and executive officer for the commission department and for each of the 2 commissions. I classify all positions in the public safety civil service system. I do everything that is necessary to make sure that the commissions are able to carry out their state, city, and both city code and charter responsibilities and mandates. With our wonderful staff, I manage appeals. I mean, I don't do all these things. Many of these employees in this room do these things, but we manage appeals. I personally preside over pre-hearing processes for disciplinary and other appeals. I conduct investigations regarding political patronage or exam conduct or events that happen in exams, the investigating. I report to commissions from time to time on departmental work. I prepare and manage the departmental budgets, appoint and supervise all of the staff in the commissions. And yep, that doesn't sum it up. I mean, kind of sums it up, but there's more, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that. We've grown. We were fat people when I was hired in 2019, and we've grown a lot. And I'm so happy and proud about where the commission is going, and I'm really happy to be here. Okay, thank you, Teresa. Okay, these are buckets, and forgive me, folks, if I missed any buckets, but I think these are the big ones. Our staff does exam development and administration. That is such a succinct way to sum up all of the hard and wonderful work that this team does. We, as a department and as a staff and for both commissions, we do communications, outreach. Sarah Butler is our primary outreach person for the Civil Service Commission. Exam staff are probably our primary for exams. And we do external relations. What I mean by that is not just with the public, but we are interacting with our other departments, not just public safety departments, all of the city departments, with the mayor's office, with the city council, with the office of employee ombud. I don't think there's a department. We just met with the city auditor the other day, office of, which one am I thinking of? The Office of Inspector General for the Police Department, the Community Police Commission. We try to stay in touch with everybody. As a non-executive department, you really have to rely on your outreach, your relationships, your conversations with people to be known and to know them. So it's a lot of unseen work, and that's fine. Like, it's not really your job to see what we do every single day, but just to put that out there. Okay, day-to-day operations and administration of a department of these teams. We support the commissions in their meetings and appeals. It's a really important body of work, and we're going to have a case status update later on in this meeting. And generally, we monitor and support operations of the city's 2 civil service systems. All right, thanks, Teresa. I'll go to the next slide. All right, these are some of our major partners and stakeholders for the civil service commissions. Maybe this is sort of summed up by what I just said, but I think that there's a couple things to add here. We work with city departments and HR units. We consult with the city attorney's office. They consult with us on questions that they have or issues that come up in their realm. We need to, and we do our very best to communicate with new employees and current employees, because civil service doesn't always get, it's not terribly glamorous, but we need our employees to know about what their rights are, what processes are available for them to access those rights. We work with our city labor negotiators and external unions. We've got to have a good relationship with all of them. And just so they know about us, we know about them. We can work in partnership from time to time. And the city unions, I think, are really grateful that we're here. Because when an employee has an issue that the union doesn't want to grieve it, they have a place to point employees to. They have another avenue or opportunity to get a remedy that they feel they are due. And they help us educate employees about what their rights are in the civil service system. The civil service system also has a relationship with the Office of Hearing Examiner. When their commission cannot hear a case for whatever reason. For instance, last year, they were 2 commissioners only, and we don't like, we tend to try to not hear a disciplinary or other kind of appeal if there is not 3 commissioners. It's up to them, but generally that's what our commissions decide. And they have the ability to delegate a case to the Office of Hearing Examiner, which operates then under their rules, and they have the right to review, actually the obligation to review that case before it is concluded. Public safety civil service does not have that in its own, does not have the ability to do that, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. And Seattle Human Resources, of course, and Public Safety Civil Service Commission, lots of the same partners. I also added, and this is also true for the Civil Service Commission, but I added the mayor and the city council. They always have a strong interest in ensuring that our fire and police departments are staffed and competent, new hires and promotional folks. But the last couple of years has been a real close look at our work by the city council and the mayor. And so those relationships have been strengthened. And so I added those here, but all of the same kinds of relationships exist for the Public Safety Civil Service Commission. Thank you for listening to that very long presentation. I did make sure. Happy to answer any questions. Happy to talk to anybody offline about this. So.
Great. So thank you.
Absolutely.
The next item on the agenda is updates and discussion. First item is police and fire exam unit updates. So Sheila, you want to talk about the lateral entry firefighter paramedic hiring?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Green. So I wanted to share an update about that program, the lateral firefighter paramedic application and testing process. First of all, I want to introduce Miranda. She is our new employee who is kind of running the show on this program. And status update, she started with us in December. We are so lucky that Miranda was available, and her skill set and her experience is somehow, like, fortuitously really aligned with the needs for this body of work. So we're so grateful that you were here, and she's cooking along. Miranda, you gave me an update yesterday that I have that I don't have at my fingertips. Could you give us an update on the number of applicants, the 34 and 27?
I think that there were, I'm so sorry. Hi, I'm Miranda. New to this. As far as the applicants, I believe as of yesterday, there were like 38 unique applicants. Of that 38, I think it was like 20. Yeah, it was like 27, 28, somewhere in there have passed. And the minimum qualifications. Thank you.
Yeah. So those folks should be scheduling and taking their exams and moving through the process. And what is the date that the application window closes?
That's the 28th of this month, and then they have until the 31st to complete their testing.
Thank you. Welcome, Miranda. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay.
I do have a question about those numbers. Would this be appropriate time last?
Can I just get through my little intro and then?
Sure.
All right. So this, as Miranda shared with us, this opened on December 27th, and it has really been quite the team effort. I am going to have a couple other folks speak about it. Yoshiko Grass-Matsui, the fire exams administrator, and Deputy Chief Branham is here also to talk on the fire's perspective. But I just want to give a little intro. And I'm going to give a little bit more of a robust update on this exam because there have been some questions about it. So I just want to be really transparent about that. But our practice, a little background, our practice is that commission staff and the Seattle Fire Department meet monthly or more frequently together. We also do this with Seattle Police Department to discuss each department's staffing needs so that we can understand, collaborate, and hopefully the commission will be able to help the fire and police departments meet their staffing needs. For several years, Battalion 3, which is the paramedic firefighter battalion, has been facing a pretty serious staffing shortage, and there are close to 45 open positions, is my understanding. Internal applications have been lower than desired and not meeting the target hire rates of about 8 paramedics per year. And paramedic is an assignment within the rank of firefighter. We have classifications in this firefighter series, starts with firefighter, fire lieutenant, fire captain, fire battalion chief, and there are additional, but those are the ones in the public safety civil service. Those are the ones that we test for. Other local jurisdictions have developed and may have had lateral entry firefighter paramedic programs. And many of those jurisdictions, that's locally and probably nationwide as well. And many of those jurisdictions stood up those programs after 2020 when Seattle and other jurisdictions lost a lot of their firefighting staff due to reasons related to the pandemic. So this team has been in conversation with the fire department about a possible lateral entry program to firefighter or specifically lateral firefighter paramedic exam since 2021. And so our staff has been working with the fire department to see what their needs are. The fire department was considering a number of options and probably still is. But we worked with fire to actually worked with fire staff to create a draft job description in 2021. And that program did not go forward at that time. But we continue to talk about it with Director Fitzpatrick, who's on the phone, with Director Lee, with Chief Branham, with various folks at the fire department. And in April 24, actually we had a conversation, we had a really robust conversation in 24 because things were getting, as I understand it, quite serious, or maybe had been serious. But and we wrote a memo in April 24 proposing a number of what we viewed as options, not all of which would be a test, but several options that we thought could help the fire department. But this was one of the options. And that union, the memo went over to the union as well. That's Local 27. Yeah, it was my understanding that since then, multiple stakeholders were becoming interested in the possibility of hiring lateral firefighter paramedics. But it was in October 2024. A stakeholder group was convened by Chief Scoggins, which included SFDHR, the Chief's Office, folks from Battalion 3, including folks representing Local 27, Local 27 itself, and UW Medical Training, the commission, us, our staff, and FFD Training Division started meeting regularly under sort of Chief Branham's corralling and leadership. The purpose of this group was to develop a one-time lateral paramedic application, test, and training program for the Seattle Fire Department. For our part, we said we can participate in this, but we don't have the staffing to support this body of work. And so the fire department said, we will support your staffing, we will support all of the costs, and we did agree that was the barrier for us. Once it was no longer a barrier, we were ready to go, and this process came together, and frankly, I think it's a minor miracle that it has come together. I want to turn to Chief Branham and Yoshiko to sort of talk a little bit about how this came together from the fire department side and the work of that stakeholder group, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, we do our wrap them.
I would love to see it.
Yoshiko Grace Matsuya, I'm the fire exams administrator here with the Public Safety Exams Unit.
Deputy Chief Sean Branham here with the Seattle Fire Department, working in collaboration with Yoshiko for the past couple of years with our promotional exams and our entry-level exam process. So very fortunate to be a part of that team.
So I think your synopsis was very good, leading up to about October of this year, when those various stakeholders came together and said, what needs to go into place structurally in order to move this forward? And I had a very narrow purview, because most of it is on the fire side. So my concerns were about the testing period, the application and minimum qualifications, when that would all need to happen so that we could deliver what's called a register. So the product of our testing unit is that we look for folks who are minimally qualified in order to fulfill the role of firefighter paramedic, in order to build a ranked list. Here are the 60, 80, 100 people that are on your ranked list. And when that is published, it goes over to the fire department, and they are responsible for an extensive pre-hire selection process, skills assessment, that Chief Branham can go into, and they are responsible for making the hire. They're the appointing authority. We do not hire firefighters. We don't have the authority to do that. And the fire department also does any training for anyone in the department. We are not responsible for any training that happens for either fire or police. So that group put together and incorporated folks that could speak to the training aspect, whether it was the paramedic training at UW Harborview, the basic skills training that folks go through for firefighters drill school, and other systems in place about that pre-employment selection process. Was there anything you would add to that?
Yeah, the process, we brought in all the stakeholders that we know were necessary. So Public Safety Civil Service, our HR department that handled our internal hiring, our training division, so our deputy chief of training division for the fire side, paramedic training, as you mentioned, and then the locals. Local 27 has that membership at this at the table for all of our meetings, because we wanted this to be a collaborative effort, that we had input from all parties or all of the membership. And so with that was a big ask of Chief Scoggins to make sure that happened. And I reached out to President Stewart directly the next day, and he had a great recommendation to create this Teams channel that we're all a part of, so we can tune in, and I don't have to get every email, but it's a way to collaborate and message each other, and we can keep up to date, so the group's up to date on what's happening along this process, which is really turned to be a fantastic recommendation. But with that, I just wanted to say that, to bring this all together, as Yoshiko and Director Shea were saying, that this is a staffing challenge for the department and the city as a whole, has been years in the making of developing. And so it seems like maybe to our membership or to people that this just took place all of a sudden, when in reality, work, conversations, thoughts, processes, stops and goes have been happening for years. And the region, recently, when I got to the division in April, the region of paramedics, Shoreline, Redmond, Bellevue, King County, they have identified there's a need for paramedics and firefighters, and they were asking, for other options that we have besides our 10-month traditional program that we put all paramedics through. Is a 10-month program. And for some agencies, once they identify a candidate to when they get that person on the medic rig, it's 18 months. And that was challenging for some agencies. However, so that was a huge lift. But when the region spoke to it repeatedly, and the Medic One Foundation, through the donors who support the Harborview training facility in which is the Medic One Foundation supported by, it was realized that something needs to happen. And so the region decided to allow for an accelerated paramedic training program of 5 months. And once that was agreed upon by the region and paramedic training, the Medic One Foundation supported and would make happen an accelerated paramedic training program for a lateral firefighter paramedic, that was the piece that brought this together. Now we had all the pieces in place to actually have paramedic training at a 5-month window for a lateral process. But that was years and conversations in the making. And then when that finally was decided upon by the region to happen, that allowed our fire department to step forward and go, hey, we have a need. We would like to participate in this accelerated training program. All right, well, we have the program for you. So then it was up to us, the fire department, to create our firefighter paramedic lateral entry process. And then we were able to work with Yoshiko and her team and the city to bring those pieces together. And that started formally, I would say, the meetings became formalized in October because all the pieces were in place. We've had many meetings and thoughts and ideas where we didn't have all the pieces in place, and it stops because not everyone's synced up. So that was the history, and then it started. And it has been a great process because we spent the first month in denial that this will not happen. It's impossible. There's no way you can put a process together and have a job bulletin announced by the end of December. And lo and behold, with your team and this office and chief and the union, we got a job bulletin posted by December 27th. And now we have an application process, which I look at, it's been years in the making, and just the right situation came together to make it happen. So we're very fortunate for that in the fire department's point of view.
Yeah, and I mean, to go to some of the details, this is not a new classification. This is a lateral, so we're hiring hoping to hire experienced firefighter paramedics who have worked elsewhere. But the classification is for firefighter. We have a similar program in the Seattle Police Department. That started in 2018.
1998.
1998. 1998. Thank you. I'm so glad I'm so many people here to correct me. 1998. You know, it exists still. We hire lateral police officers. You heard many updates last year, and we'll hear them this year about how many lateral officers we've been able to hire. And but they're hired at the rank of police officer. And it is sometimes a sensitive topic for sure. You know, it's hard, I think, to sometimes bring people in from the outside who are experienced and didn't come up through the department. You know, Chief Branham spoke to the need. It's a regional need, but specifically Seattle. And you know, I'm really proud of this process. There was a lot of hard work that has gone into it, is still going into it, and I also wasn't sure it could be done. But you know, I'm happy to answer anybody's. Oh yeah, Yoshiko, go ahead.
Thank you. The only thing I would add is that I'm glad that you mentioned the lateral entry police officer, because I believe if we didn't have a lateral entry police officer program, this would not have come together in that short amount of time. But we have a successful lateral entry police officer program that's been in place for nearly 30 years. And the minimum qualifications are very closely informed with what we do for police, and the process that we do for testing is very much informed and very much based on what we do for lateral entry police. So if this was new ground, I think it would have been a very, very hard row to row. But because we already have a successful lateral entry program, many of the questions that we had about, is it possible, is it permissible, how can we arrange the testing, how do we look at qualifications, were already answered because they're already done on our team on the police side.
Yeah, and actually that reminds me of a couple of things. Chief Branham and Yoshiko, will you please speak to how the minimum requirements for this position were developed?
the paperwork. So this is the current bulletin that is posted right now for lateral entry firefighter paramedic. And one of the things that we wanted to do was, of course, create an entryway for folks across the country, not just locally, to get into this as a potential candidate. And so knowing that it's an entry-level firefighter position with just 2.5 more years of experience, we wanted to say, we can't ask for something that requires 10 years of experience, right? We're looking, these are entry-level positions. Paramedics are at the level of a firefighter. And while there are a few paramedic lieutenants, they typically don't enter in the program without going up through being a paramedic for a number of years. So we wanted to create something that was equivalent to many of the requirements that we had for police in terms of the number of times. Where it's different from entry level, here at the city of Seattle, firefighter is considered a entry level role, and it has for many years. To be a firefighter, you need to be 18 years old. You need to have a high school diploma or GED, ability to work in the United States, and you can get a driver's license. The philosophy has been forever and ever, and I'm stealing some of Chief Branham's words, but that will teach you to be a firefighter. We'll take you to drill school. You will do 16 weeks of extensive training. We'll teach you all that you need to know about the service. You don't have to have previous experience in order to apply. So it is very much considered an entry-level role, and we have candidates who are 18 years old who are coming through our process. Never had a job before. What is different about this is that we are asking that they have that 2.5 years minimum experience, that they have a certification at the paramedic level, not just an EMT level, that they have gone through a academy somewhat like ours, or an approved professional academy, and that they have the same certifications, professional certifications, that a firefighter who did go through our drill school and had that 16 weeks under their belt would already have. So when you go through drill school here at Seattle Fire, you're going to achieve what's called a Firefighter 1 certification, a Firefighter 2, hazmat awareness, hazmat operations level. So we wanted to closely mirror what's going on with the lateral entry police, but also what were the minimum qualifications for an internal candidate who's already in the Seattle Fire Department to apply for the assignment of paramedic, which they do on an annual basis.
Sure.
Do you want to talk about that part?
The internal candidate? So we have our internal Seattle Fire Department internal candidates for paramedic. It gets advertised once a year. We just closed the current application process on January 10th. And you have to have, there's minimum requirements for that for your time and grade as a firefighter to apply. And you can shorten that if you were had previous medical experience, let's say, to reduce that time frame down to 1 year. And so what we looked at was, this is our minimum requirements for our internal candidates. And we have lateral candidates, and we're trying to make it as similar as possible, so there's not a big deviation. But our internal candidates will go through their process, which they've all been notified now. They'll go through a classroom section for like not practice, but like an orientation, and then they'll have their skills evaluation next month, and then they'll go through their interviews with Dr. Sager and myself. So they have their process, and the lateral process. We tried very hard to mimic that in a sense. So it's the same type of experience, and that's proven to be the right path. So it feels like it's comparable for both tracks.
And I would say that first stakeholder meeting, there were about 15, 16 people in the room. And we were like, we could form a subgroup to really dedicate ourselves to knocking out the language of the bulletin, the minimum qualifications, the testing time period, when applications were going to be held. So we formed a subcommittee that Chief Branham chaired to bring us together to work on just that component, which included Eric Timms from UW Harborview, Chief Goins from Training Division, Chief Branham that we talked about, myself. Am I leaving anyone else?
Captain Wallace.
Captain Wallace, Hannah from, and Dory, I believe, from SFDHR. So that smaller
And
group.
local 27.
We're not moving enough. Thank you. So that smaller group, and it doesn't sound small when I think about it, but that smaller group got together to really hammer out some of the details. And we went by it line by line to figure out what were those minimum qualifications that we want someone to meet in order to be eligible to apply and go through this testing process. The backside of that and what we do as a commission staff is we're setting up a test vendor. Hey, who has time to do this? And can you get this done for us in this time frame? So I have to reach out to our test vendor and say, will this even work for you and can you support it? We have to look at, do these have an oral board component like our entry level fire? And would we want to keep one? And the answer was absolutely yes. We do one for lateral entry police under our umbrella. So we need to put together a committee in order to form the oral board questions because they didn't exist. We went to class comp and said, class comp in SDHR, we have a program that's like this for police. Do you see any issues with doing it for fire? And got their okay, green light there. Trying to think of what else I had to do to run around.
You did a lot.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, because we did, it was really a lot of, it was the right work, because we met with the local, Chief Scoggins, the labor negotiator for the city. We wanted to make, and with your meetings, we wanted to make sure that we were compliant and still providing opportunity for people who were applying and to make sure that our own membership, they would be okay with the candidates that we're bringing forward with the minimum requirements and qualifications. And so, you know, those meetings that we talked about, those were the meetings that really you had the key players that could make these decisions so that we brought the bigger group in. Those were kind of already structured and then they would weigh in. But, you know, having those key people, when you have the union and the labor negotiator guiding your process about how to make this a seamless experience for all parties, that was very helpful, right, in this.
And knowing that you also you're not going to control for the experience of the candidates. These are minimum qualifications to apply, much like for any other job. And so folks may exceed them and they may not meet them, which we've experienced so far as well.
Chief Branham, will you just say a few words about outreach to the members of Battalion 3?
So for the, I took the position in April when I came on board Battalion 3 as deputy chief. And formally, the first Tuesday of every month, we have Tuesday series where we address the D3 members for an hour to bring up questions. And staffing has always been brought up as a concern, how we're going to address it. And so we tried to address it from the beginning with through special events. If we can hire, we were working with outside agencies, Redmond, Shoreline, Bellevue, that when we can't staff our special events with paramedics, could we staff them with outside agencies? That was one of a recommendation from the membership, and we're just looking for other avenues. So that got proposed, and we went down that path because that would allow, if we can't staff a special event with overtime paramedics, we have to take a unit out of service and put it at a special event. So the chief worked with the other agencies and got the agreement that we could, if we didn't have paramedics, staff a special event with an outside agency medic. That would allow us to keep our paramedics in service for the community. That is currently in an interlocal agreement between all the other locals. It's been there for 3 months. With that, we've had other staffing considerations. Formally, the lateral process, we formalized it. It got brought up at a Tuesday series in October. And because that's when we knew that we could make this happen, and that was the path. But we couldn't announce early. Like, I don't believe in announcing hope or a plan early to a membership because they've been living on hope. And and things not coming together. So I had to make sure that this was actually happening before I could announce it. So when people think it got dropped on us late, well, you've been told, you've been given false hope before, and now I wanted to make sure that we could give you actually something real that is working. That's just how I work. So that's why the formal announcement started to be talked about in October and going forward. And that was key because, the union rep, Lieutenant Ellis is the paramedic, and he was in the Tuesday series. He has talked to this to the membership. The membership has been aware of it. I will say that people find it difficult to understand that we could put something together in this time frame. What they have a hard time realizing is all the work that was done prior to this. So it seems quick, but it got announced, and when you have 10 to 20 people every week working on a project with a high priority, things come together. So yeah, that's the formal announcement. And I talk about it at the beanery table. I go out, I work overtime in the companies because the membership, not just Battalion 3 members, this is firefighter paramedics. The membership has questions. So I'm out addressing the membership at station visits, answering these questions. And a lot of it is once they understand the nuances and some of the details that, oh, they're going to go through a drill school. Oh, I didn't know that. Right? Oh, they have to have previous experience. Oh, no one told us that. So it's just about getting the message out to the membership. And once they understand that, they feel more comfortable. There was a B3 representative that spoke at the union meeting Thursday and got a positive reception to that. So the membership is aware and is positive at this time. So that's the formal announcement.
You mind speaking to when that formal announcement was made?
We talked about it at Tuesday. So I thought it was the first Tuesday of October. It might have been, I don't know, and I'd have to look at when our official meeting was, but as soon as we knew that this was happening, it got announced at Tuesday series.
Well, I guess my question is to be more specific, is like, when was it actually, it seems like it was brought up that it was being discussed, but the formal announcement, to my knowledge, it happened on December 20th, that this was actually going forward. Is that accurate, or I might have missed it on?
No, I guess formal to me is me saying, hey, D3 members, you had a staffing concern. This is what we've agreed to do. This is what we're going forward. This is how we're going to do it. The chief made an announcement to the department in December, but I was announcing to the members before that, once we knew it was underway. And yes, it was a process because it wasn't complete. So I'm announcing the process, and here's the steps to it. And so that's, to me, that was my formal announcement.
Okay.
Just to clarify, like, yes, when I say that be announcing to the membership, that that's what we're doing, the process that we're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like in my experience, it was that most members that I spoke with were more along the lines of that this was in the works and that we're working towards it, but that nothing was finalized, that it was still in process. And so I guess that's what I was more referring to, the formal announcement. I guess in my mind, there's a very large difference between, hey, we're working on this. This looks like it's coming down the pipe versus here, we're moving forward. It's been agreed upon, and here's the details.
Yeah, I guess that was on me. I should have announced that this is happening. It's been agreed upon. Well, I guess when I said that, like, hey, this is what we've decided. We've come together. The chiefs told me to bring in the union and start working on this as a group. That to me was enough. But it is a process. I mean, we're at the application process, right? Then we're going to go through the oral board process. I mean, the whole thing is a process until we have 16 lateral firefighter paramedics working on a rig. Paramedic training is still a process. So yes, I think Commissioner, to me, announcing the process, it is a process until it's completed. So that's my take.
Yeah, and there were several things that had to happen before we could even settle on a date. Like, we needed to hire Miranda. We didn't know if we would be able to hire someone, but I remember talking to you about it on December 2nd and earlier, saying we are doing this.
Well, I guess my understanding was we are moving forward with this process, but that nothing had been finalized. There was nothing presented to this commission, to my knowledge, of specific details, the written job posting, those sorts of things. So I suppose in my mind, and this was, I didn't communicate this effectively, but I was under the assumption because traditionally, correct me if I'm wrong, but at least in the last 10 years, we've only hired firefighters. There's only one path to be hired by the Seattle Fire Department. Is that accurate?
That's right. And that's what we'll still be doing. That's what we'll do in this process, is hire firefighters.
Yeah. And so this, to me, though, is very different. And try not to go too much into the weeds here, but Yoshiko, I think you brought up, we've been hiring lateral police officers for many years now.
Mm-hmm.
If this process, in my mind, was just to be hiring lateral firefighters, then that would be a very similar process to hiring lateral police officers. And I don't know what the percentage is, but the vast majority of the membership of Local 27 and the vast majority of folks who work for the fire department as operations firefighters work as a firefighter, where working in Battalion 3, per Battalion 3 literature, you're trained to be level of a well-trained physician in the field. So looking here at like classification, same level of education, experience, knowledge, ability, and other qualifications may be required. The education to do it, you got to go through a 10-month program, which is actually more like a year if you had an A&P, so 10 to 12-month program. The experience you need, the experience to look for a paramedic, especially one that operates in the level that we operate on. It's my understanding that Seattle Fire, Boston, and then maybe San Antonio, we sort of practice paramedicine one way, and then there's the rest of the country. In lots of the country, there's paramedics. Every firefighter is a paramedic, but they're not out intubating people. They're not out taking people's airway. They're not out giving paralytic drugs, scheduled 1A drugs. There's a huge variety of skills and responsibilities on a paramedic in Seattle system that is unique to Seattle and is different from the rest of the country. And then if you compare that to the rank of firefighter, you're talking about hiring an entry-level firefighter. Well, you're looking for someone who can perform these firefighting duties. That to me is a far cry from someone who has the ability to come in and operate as a well-trained physician in the field. That's, in my mind, a very different skill set. And that's what makes it very different from just police department. You're hiring someone to come be a police officer. If you're going to do a lateral firefighter, you hire someone to come be a firefighter. We're talking about someone who's going to be a lateral firefighter and a paramedic. If there's a slash even in the title. And so that's some of the concerns that I have, and we can bring that up at a different time as well. But some of my big concerns here is that there's a huge difference in education, experience, knowledge, and ability, qualification required to do the job of a paramedic compared to do the job of an entry-level firefighter.
So how does the process take that into account? Tom's concerned about how, Seattle has sort of one standard versus maybe other places at different standard to be a paramedic to begin with.
So they have to be a nationally certified paramedic, just like you had to take your test, right? To do that. And let's just be clear, the well-trained physician came from a marketing pamphlet that we use internal. So that is marketing jargon that we use or has been used in the past. When we hire we have to have a minimum requirement. That's what you need to get in to just apply, right? Then you're going to go through an evaluation process, a public safety civil service process, and then there'll be a SFD internal evaluation process for these members.
Post-register.
Post-register, where we'll get into, some meetings probably recorded, but we'll have our own internal evaluation to further evaluate these members to look beyond what the minimum requirements are. And then they're going to go through a 10-week drill school. They're already firefighter 1 and 2. They're already the same firefighter that you were when you came out of drill school. And now they're going to go through another 10-week drill school just to make sure they know what we do. And then they're gonna go to a 5-month paramedic training program. Because even though they probably did an innovation in Florida, or they ran a code in Texas, or they gave some drugs in California, and it might not be in line with how we do it, if they're gonna go to a 5-month program, and that program is being developed by the region. We've had 3 meetings, I was just in it 2 days ago. It's being developed by the region to make sure, and the goal is that when that person graduates from that 5-month program, they're at the same skill level, bare minimum that you were when you graduated your 10-month program. Now, mind you, we train paramedics from King County, Redmond, Bellevue, all on our rigs at Seattle. They learn our way. Then they go back to their agency and they're on probation for a year. And they have to make sure that they learn things their way. And we are okay with that. They're okay with that. So I would say our paramedic training division is squared away enough as a region to put together a 5-month program that they can go and look at a candidate coming in and make sure that they are squared away enough to know how we do it in Seattle, that when they ride with you in the seat next to you, they're going to be a competent, great partner. Because my paramedic training program has promised me, and the region said, we will accept no less than that. And I have to believe those professionals. So that would address those concerns, I hope.
May I also add, Brandon and I are working on the register, and there may end up being 35 people in the register. There may end up being 60 people in the register. And the fire department can choose whether to screen all of those people, half of those people, 2 of those people. It's up to them to decide once we hand the register over what to do with those candidates. Those candidates may not meet the minimum expectations that the fire department has for a clinician or a paramedicine practitioner. And so they may not hire any of them. That's not up for me to decide, because once I hand that list over, it's like a baton in a race. Tag, it's your turn. You run with skills assessment, the background check, the medical exam, the review of their employment history, their education. They do psychological screening. I'm guessing they probably will need to do a physical agility test. So they will go through an extremely thorough vetting process once they get past this one that I, as a commission, we are not in charge of. It's the fire department. And of those 30 to 60 to 100 people, the fire department doesn't have to hire any of them if they don't want to. Or they can hire 2, or they can hire 20. It's up to them and their budget and other considerations that they have for training capacity, of course. But really, it goes past the jurisdiction of the commission once we put together the register, which is supposed to be posted, fingers crossed, I'm going to say this in the air, March 1st. So after that, the commission work is done.
Can we take your baton?
Follow-up question. Commissioner Mays, when it comes to recruitment, like hiring, process changes and things like that, what is the official or standard communication process to staff, to leadership, to employees, just to say, hey, we have this process change?
Do you mean on the fire side?
Either side.
Gosh, I don't know that there is a typical one or a standardized rollout. And this is the first new the first new hiring testing process since I've been here.
Yeah, I mean, like with the entry level, right now we're running the entry level firefighter process. And so, I mean, I always just took it to be that we're on a cycle, like promotional cycle, like lieutenants are coming up or entry levels coming up. And I'm sure that somehow I start getting contacted from you, and then there's a memo that gets cut from you that goes to our fire chief's office. They take it, and then that memo comes out from the fire chief's office to the department. It's typically how I get it.
We're on a 2-year cycle for promotional examinations, and so it's pretty built in where the announcement of the exam dates goes out to the department, and then it goes out to the membership of the department in August, typically, for the year that coming up. So
Yeah.
like Chief said, we have fireboat engineer and fire lieutenant coming up as our promotional exams here in 2025, and they get advised that running that exam and formally goes out in August or 24.
So for internal processes, which is a good part of what this testing team, I should say, does, there's SharePoint pages that this information is shared to. There's emails directly to potential candidates. And then when there's a set of candidates, it's mostly email communication, that sort of thing. There's also a booklet that's published for each of the promotional exam that those candidates get and can reference, and also contact Yoshiko or whoever it is running like point on that process. We try to be as accessible to employees as possible. This is an external process, so we're candidates from outside. So the fire department did a lot of outreach, did a lot of advertising. I don't know exactly how they did that or what audiences they were targeting. And yeah, so for my part, for commissioners, I brought this up with all of the commissioners and talked to them about it. I felt I was being responsive to their questions and concerns, and Commissioner Applegate definitely had more interest in this topic than Commissioner Green or Commissioner Knoll, who you replaced. Trying to think of other things that may be responsive to your question. Is that going to answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit. I was just thinking like in regards to communications, if they are staff that are in the field most of the time, doing their work, how much are they looking at the computers? How much are they looking at SharePoint? Could there be a gap in communication to make sure that it's trickling down to the right individual?
Members?
Right.
They have to look at their email at least once, every shift at least one time. That's on them. And then they do a roll call every shift with memos. We usually communicate memos, which are updates for dispatchers, which take place immediately. So yeah, that's on the membership, and that's in our policy operating guidelines as a requirement.
Thank you.
So I do have some more questions about the classification side of it, and I appreciate you guys taking the time. I have obviously a lot of faith in our training division, both on the paramedic training side and on the fire side. I think one comment just to make is, firefighter 1, firefighter 2 hazmat, and this is the same as paramedic for folks who may or may not be aware. Maybe you guys already all know this, but there's a huge difference between what we do in the city of Seattle as a firefighter and what firefighter 1 and firefighter 2 basic testing is for. The Seattle Fire Drill School goes much farther above and beyond the basic requirements of firefighter 1 and 2. We get way more in depth, way more reps, way more hours, way more training than what's required for that cert. And then also, the experience you get in the city of Seattle, there's other cities, of course, that have the similar volume, but I've got a friend who's fire 1, fire 2 out in Wyoming. He works in Alpine, Wyoming. Maybe goes on 2 calls that, send me a picture of a car into a bear. That was what he was dealing with a week ago. And so I just like to add sort of out into the conversation that there are vast differences between the training programs that folks get, firefighter 1 and 2. I was actually firefighter 1 and 2 trained through a volunteer academy prior to getting hired. And that was about, even though I had the cert, I walked into Seattle Fire with a fire 1, fire 2 hazmat. That was maybe 2% of what we got in that Seattle Fire Drill School. And I just say all that to say that, not that Seattle Fire is the best thing ever, and we're just so much better. I'm not saying that. I guess where I'm trying to make the distinction here is that saying, well, this person is a fire 1, fire 2, there's a huge array of skill sets, and Yoshiko, you're nodding your head that it's maybe different from some other professional certification where if you have that professional cert, that this is the exact standard. Typically go a lot farther with our fire training.
And that kind of goes to the role of testing. We're not making a hiring decision. I'm not trying to come up with who is the bestest, most excellent, best person ever in the world.
Sure.
And in fact, don't have the subject matter expertise to do that. That's why we hand the baton off to fire, and they do their extensive pre-screening, and they are the ones who make the hiring decision. So I'm not hiring at the top here. We're testing to say, do these people meet the minimum qualifications in order to get on a list to be sent over to the fire department so that the fire department can determine if they have equivalent experience, knowledge, skills, and abilities, and will be a good addition to Seattle Fire. But it's up to them to make that decision.
Absolutely. And I think one of the big parts that I'm trying to understand, and this went to my question earlier about how we are an independent agency, but we also work with all the shareholders. It's kind of a unique structure, at least it seemed unique to me. With the qualification of positions, it's clear here, Rule 7 here, classification. Each position in the classified civil service should be classified by the direction of the executive director and allocated to its appropriate class in accordance with the character, difficulty, and responsibility of its designated duties. Positions shall be allocated to a given class when the same descriptive title may be used to designate each position. Number 2, I think this is very pertinent. The same level of education, experience, knowledge, ability, and other qualifications may be required of incumbents. Number 3, similar tests may be used to select incumbents. And number 4, one schedule of compensation will apply with equity under substantially the same employment condition. We're talking about, to get this job in the Seattle Fire Department, you need to go through 10 months to a year of a training program. So from an education component, it's hard for me, at least in my brain, to understand how that would be an equivalent rank to someone who doesn't have to go through that as a firefighter. So you have a firefighter, and then on top of that, you got a year of training. That seems pretty big difference. To my knowledge, there's nothing in the fire department. You go to a specialty team, I believe it's 16 shifts is the standard. If you go to our technical rescue team, hazmat team, all these various teams, 16 shift requirement. That's very different from a out of operations 10-month intensive program along with a 2-month anatomy and physiology class. The knowledge, ability, and other qualifications, being able to innovate, being able, I've used well-trained position in the field. I think without getting into semantics too much, where I'm trying to go with that is you go to an emergency room and they give you the same drugs that we give you to slow your heart rate down, to speed your heart rate up. If you can't breathe, we're going to paralyze you and sedate you and put a breathing tube in. That is an extremely risky operation. There's a reason anesthesiologists, that's what they do. I think they have to do 2,000 innovations. I don't know what to be an anesthesiologist, you become a doctor for 4 years, and then I think it's either 3 or 4 more years where all you do is work on that. We're doing that in people's living room, in alleyways, the same drugs, same thing. Same with cardiology. We're reading EKG strips. We're making decisions in the field whether to intervene on this person's heart, and whether that's shocking them or giving them very high potency drugs. Sedating folks with ketamine who are having a behavioral disturbance. It's on paramedics to step in with ketamine, sedate them if we need to sedate somebody. And that's just a very brief thing of like a well-trained physician. There's 2,500 hour program worth of stuff we're trained on. And so,
I'm sorry, I got lost there. What are you asking then?
Well, this was all written up under the classification of firefighter, and it's kind of saying, well, we hire firefighters, we've been hiring firefighters for a long time, and this is just an extension of that. And I guess what I'm trying to present, and one of my grave concerns here, is that this is a very different role in firefighter. That yes, right now the system says firefighter, paramedic is under that classification, but when I read these rules, I look at this, the tests, similar tests. Well, you can't use similar tests. You got to test to see if they're paramedic trained. One schedule of compensation will apply with equity and substantially the same employment. Paramedics get a 17% bump in pay, which is 2% higher than that of lieutenants. So again, if this is the same classification and rank as firefighter, how does that equate to being paid more than a lieutenant, which is the next rank up? But right here it says it should be similar. Again, I don't understand all the background of these rules. I wish we had a lot more time to go into this, and maybe we should do that another time. But one of my big concerns here with this is that, and what I was bringing up, that I never saw anything in writing, is that I was hoping that when this was written up, that it's going to be under a different classification, that this would be spelled out very clearly, because in my mind, these are very different positions.
Okay.
And that I'd love to see and get sort of everyone's opinion and the legal standpoint of how this classification fits into the same rank and also the same education, experience, knowledge, ability, and other qualification as that of a firefighter.
But isn't this, Tom, isn't this an assignment, a paramedic being assigned as opposed to sort of the general firefighter classification? I think maybe your question is whether a paramedic should be a separate classification, in which case I think all this stuff would apply, but it seems like this is an assignment within the classification of firefighter. And so that makes it seem to me anyway quite different from just because your general firefighter may not know how to intubate anybody.
They don't do that stuff.
Right, and so they're still in the classification of firefighter, but it's the specialization of being a paramedic that puts you in a different assignment. I think that's I get the impression that's sort of how this is set up.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and I would say, we have considered for many years, the fire department at some times and the commission at some times, whether paramedic should be a separate classification. And that was one of the options that we sent forth in the memo in January of 2024, saying, do you want to pursue developing paramedic as its own classification? And the answer was no. And I believe that there are labor implications for that around overtime regulations in the federal government. And there are also the time that it would take in order to create a brand new paramedic, which is currently not part of the civil service system because it's not a reg that exists. You would need a law passed in order to include paramedic under the umbrella of civil service. It's not going to happen in 2.5 months. And so in the menu of options that were delivered and debated back and forth between the fire department and civil service, that option was discounted at this time. It doesn't mean that it might come up again later on, or it might be considered in the future to say we should create a new classification. But creating a new classification is a long project.
Yeah, with very far-reaching implications. And for instance, if there were a paramedic classification, paramedics would not be firefighters. They would not be able to work as firefighters. And firefighters would not be able to become paramedics unless they got a different job. So, I mean, that's just like the tiniest window on all of the things that the city as a policy matter would need to consider. I think it would impact lots of people, and there are huge labor implications as well.
I suppose I have some more questions about that then. Well, one thing you said wouldn't be possible in 2.5 months. What I'm looking at is if we're now opening up a new pathway to get hired with the Seattle Fire Department, which right now we have one, and now we're opening up a second one. So this is a huge change, and we're talking about a different drill school, a different paramedic training, a different folks that we're hiring. And so my concern here is not the time it takes to do this. My concern is, are we doing this correctly? And so if we're lumping this in that, hey, this is a firefighter, this is the same as entry-level firefighter, and that's how we're moving forward, my concern is that is based on just some basics that I'm giving in this meeting. I don't know that that's appropriate. And so the 2.5 month time window, that is not of my concern. My concern is that the Public Safety Civil Service Commission is doing their job and is putting forward an application that is accurate. And then also, as far as the reclassification, again, I don't know how this process works, but what I just heard you say is you wouldn't be a firefighter. Well, how do we know this? We haven't gone down this process. Why couldn't they be? Couldn't they still, right now, I can go ride on a ladder truck, I can ride on an engine.
We can do this.
So how does that?
Say that, because it's been something that the fire department has considered for many years.
Okay.
It's part of the Fair Labor Standards Act that folks with fire suppression training are exempt from fair labor laws that mean that you get a different overtime rate than the normal folks who don't do fire suppression. So those are things that we do know, and we have been in conversation about for quite a number of years. And the department has explored those options in the past. And again, this was the route that the fire department asked us to engage in to meet the staffing needs that are critical at this moment. And I would say that they are appropriate because we're not creating a new classification.
But
no new classification is being created at this time.
Correct, but what I'm getting at is I'd love to see, and ask this in an email on the 26th, I'd love to see the information behind that yes, we're not creating a new classification because of the way this has been written up, but my concern is it should be a new classification and that it's written up on a basis that this is the same as firefighter, where I'm concerned it's not.
I see.
So Tom, you're concerned that essentially we're creating a new classification sort of by the back door. Well, we're creating a new classification without going through the formal process. That's sort of what you're thinking, that this is such a distinct function from regular firefighters that it needs to be a new classification.
I think that it should at least be explored, and it says here that the classification is up to the Public Safety Civil Service Commission.
Right.
And so regardless of how it's classified right now, now we're coming forward and saying, hey, we want to hire this new pathway. Well, my hope and what I'm thinking is, well, we should investigate, is this appropriate to push forward as an entry-level firefighter? Or should this be done as a different classification? And I'm not trying to subvert hiring. I get a text every day with how short we are. And if I decide to go to a baseball game with my kid, I know that someone else's family doesn't have medical protection. So this means a lot to me. This is not just like an academic discussion.
Yeah.
And I live in the city, so this is my family's medical care as well.
The only, I hear the concern.
Well, one more thing I'll say.
Yeah.
So when I hear, well, we only have 2.5 months to do this, this has been brought up, I think you said, Chief Branham, this has been going on for 10 to 20 years. This has been an issue. And so the 2.5 months is hard for me to understand how that comes into play in this particular case.
I want to be very clear that I said creating a new classification wouldn't happen in 2.5 months.
Correct, yeah.
I wasn't talking about, that was the timeline that I was working under.
Okay.
I was saying a body of work to create a classification could not be done in 2.5 months. That's my point.
Sure.
I will say that there are firefighters who do this now who are not in the new classification. They are firefighters, that is their classification, and they perform this work right now. And so if we're not creating something new, they do this on a daily basis already as a firefighter who is in a paramedic assignment.
Question. What is the percentage of the body of work within the scope of a paramedic and
that's a good question. So, do you mean how much is EMS medical and how much is fire?
So to differentiate the paramedic scope of work duties versus a firefighter, is it a small percentage?
So and please jump in, because I have a tendency to just talk over things. I talk over Chief all the time. It's back to the Mutt and Jeff show, but you're the tall one. Firefighters here in the city of Seattle are all trained EMTs as well. So they do EMS work. And I would say about 80% of the responses that firefighters go to are medical related. Yeah. So they perform a subset of paramedicine already on a day-to-day basis.
But is the percentage high enough to warrant a separate classification?
No.
Okay,
No.
Thank you.
EMT firefighters are firefighters.
And that's one other thing I wanted to bring up as well too with the classification conversation is that one of the big things as far as a fire lieutenant goes, if you're an entry-level firefighter, your job is essentially you fall into a chain of command and you follow the direction of your supervising officer, whether that's a lieutenant or a captain at the time. If you are on a medical run, the medical authority on scene is the paramedic. So saying an entry-level firefighter who works underneath the supervision of somebody else and is not in a leadership role, they're a worker bee basically. Sure, you make decisions. I'm not saying that you don't have any decision-making capacity, but your chain of command is LT, what do you want done? Cap, what do you want done? The paramedics show up, paramedic, what do you want done? And the paramedic's job is leadership. Is to say, you do this, you do this, you do this. You look at this packet and say, more than anything, paramedic training is a leadership program because when you go on scene and someone's dying, you have to have that leadership role and someone's got to have a plan and delegate all that stuff. Well, as far as the classification goes, I want to take a step back. So if I go on a Med 7 or a Med 6, which is like a severe trauma or someone in cardiac arrest, At a minimum, I am leading a team of 8 firefighters, firefighter, lieutenant, captain. As the medical authority on scene, that is my job. To say that now and that happens regularly. We go on med 7s, med 6s, or if any other scene I show up on, if there's an engine company or ladder company there, which is 90% of the time, there's 4 members on that. Again, you're the medical authority on scene, so you're leading a team of 4. If you compare that to the rank of firefighter doesn't have any leadership other than just taking care of themselves. And yeah, you got to make some decisions. I don't mean to discount what firefighters do, but as far as official leadership role, they don't have anything. And now you're stepping into, you've got a leadership of 8 people regularly, 4 people every time they're on scene, unless you're there with an 8 car, which would be 2. So that's another part of it. You got a year of school, 10 months to a year of school. And then once you're out, you are the authority on these scenes, which is a very different animal in my mind than being a firefighter on the back seat of an engine, taking direction from an officer. Or if you show up on a medical scene, you're taking direction from a paramedic. So that's another side of this classification discussion that I wanted to bring up.
Do you have a question that you would like me or somebody else to help you answer?
I guess we could move on from the classification discussion, but these are some of the things I was hoping, and I'm not trying to place blame. I'm not mad at anyone. My thought was, hey, I was under the impression that we were working on this lateral firefighter paramedic process. And with my experience with these other processes is that once we get things written up, that oftentimes there's like some sort of a close to final draft that goes to the commission. Commissioner reviews these sorts of things and then puts input in, whether it's a rule change or whether it's a due diligence report. Those are the 2 things that I've really been involved with last year. With this one, and one of the reasons I'm having this conversation now as opposed to having this at a different time, I was under the impression that yes, we're moving forward, yes, this is moving fast, but that the commission would then have an opportunity to do the work of the commission to make sure that this all falls in line with the rules as laid out for the commission. But then it was posted without that going through. And I realized that, again, it's not blame. I realized it was just, hey, this is a routine duty. In my mind, this isn't routine. This is very different. This is a new hiring. This is a classification issue. I also wanted to talk about the physical exam requirement. I guess where I'm going with this is I would have loved to have had all this conversations earlier on. So I apologize that this is happening now. As opposed to earlier, I just didn't understand and I didn't communicate effectively that I wanted to review all this in writing, not just sort of verbally aware that this was going on.
No, I can see your point. I think if we were making a classification change, I think definitely would have to come in. Again,
we were establishing a new.
Right. Yeah. But I guess in this case, it does seem like this is just an assignment, then a classification that maybe we wouldn't, but I'll grant you that it's not absolutely crystal clear about sort of where and at what point the commission would either whether and when the department would seek our approval of something like this. Obviously, creating a new classification, they would, but this sort of thing, it doesn't seem like they don't. So yeah, maybe, and I'll grant you, it's not completely clear as to where that line is. Yeah, so this is sort of a new thing. I mean, the police have long had this lateral hire business, but since this is the first one the fire department has done, yeah, it's not. Yeah,
and I think the other differentiation too, Richard, just maybe you're interested, but when we're hiring a lateral police officer, my understanding is they go work as a police officer, which is, it would be like if we were hiring a firefighter saying, hey, you're going to come work on our ladders and trucks. That's what whatever the percentage of firefighters, that's what they do. This is a lateral firefighter / paramedic. I mean, even the title has a slash.
It's an assignment. Yeah.
It's an assignment, but that's how it currently is listed as an assignment. But I guess what I'm saying is, this is not hiring someone just to go work on engine and ladder trucks. This is hiring someone to come work on engine and ladder trucks. So that's part of what they do. But it's also to work on a paramedic unit, right? Which is extremely different, and it takes a year of school. It has all these leadership responsibilities, all these other things. So it's a little different. I suppose in my mind, hearing that, we've been doing this with police officers. I suppose in my mind, this is a little different in my mind.
It's not entirely comparable.
Exactly. That's the case. I guess I'm trying to.
So Rachel, do you know what there are there sort of assignments within the classification of police officer?
There are, yes,
Okay.
there are. So typically speaking, our lateral hires will come in and do some time in patrol before they go to a specialty unit. But you'll have people with experience in investigations, they're needed in special areas, and that is also considered an assignment. So yes, that is, we don't advertise it that way, so I suppose that's the differentiation, but based on their skill set. And there are min quals that have to be evaluated, but everyone brings different things to the table. So as long as they meet those minimum quals, then they can be considered for an assignment within that position of police officer.
Have we beaten this topic to death?
I want to make sure I've covered what I've heard Commissioner Applegate raise. You are questioning whether paramedic is properly within the classification of firefighter. And I think it's, as Yoshiko said, it's been considered by the department. We've talked about a class 1 in the union. But I mean, it is like it is firefighter is the pool and paramedic is an assignment within that pool. And I wanted to just loop back on your 17% premium. That's something that's negotiated by your union, which you know. But there are lots of premiums negotiated by your union, but it's negotiated for the classification of firefighter for that assignment. So hope that I addressed that. I sent you an email last night touching on that among many other topics. And then you also brought up the CPAP.
Yeah,
which
that's one I'd love to discuss.
Yeah, you brought it before, but I don't think this is the right group to discuss it because we don't.
It's not part of the civil service.
It's not the civil service process. It's part of Quincy Chief Branham, although I don't think you're administering CPAPs. Yeah, that is definitely part of the post-register pre-hire assessment or firefighter or any other entry level position. Although this is one. So hopefully we've covered that.
No, we used to have a physical agility test that was part of the civil service process, but it was spun off many, many years ago and is now administered. And the vendor is selected, the test is selected all by the vendor.
So that's, I guess, again, some questions I have here. 8.03 special requirements. This is section 8 has to do with applications and applicants. Let's see here. 8.03A, the commission may prescribe such limits of age and such other specific requirements, physical or otherwise, as in the commission's judgment are required by the nature of the work to be performed. And then I look here at 9.08. And this has to do, that's chapter, is it section 9? What's the correct word? Section or chapter?
Rule 9.
Okay, thank you. Examinations. Content of the examinations, 9.08. Examination may include written, personal qualifications, physical, right there, physical or performance tests or evaluations of training and experience, interviews or any other suitable evaluation of fitness, or any combination of such tests. Such tests may evaluate education, experience, aptitude, knowledge, skill, personal characteristics, and other qualifications to determine the relative fitness of candidates. Where I'm going with all this is that it seems like, at least in the rules, it's written in that we do have, as the commission, we have an authority to, if we see fit, to have some sort of a physical requirement. I think it was the September meeting, I asked a few questions and it was told that I think of the first drill school, I can't remember how many folks started drill school on the first one, but only 30 graduated. Do you remember, is it 60 that started?
I don't actually know that information.
I had it written down
It's on
somewhere.
the fire department side.
This last one too, I think they said they started out with 40 some odd candidates and then they ended up with 13 graduated. That's greater than 50% attrition rate. My understanding, just from in passing, is that has been a similar attrition rate now for the past 4, 5, 6 years.
No, it depends on class to class.
Class to class. Okay, so overall though, would you say that that's a somewhat accurate representation of what's gone on for the past 5 years?
It's not every class.
Not
Some
every
classes more pass, some less. It depends on the class.
Okay. And so I guess where my mind goes is that if we're sending a register over, and my understanding of registers, we're saying that these folks on this list, they've passed all the background information, that this is not, the background information that we require to hire them, they meet the minimum qualifications.
Right.
When I say background information. So they've passed our requirements, and then as part of this, we're saying these folks on this list are should have the ability, or what's the word I'm looking for? It's that these candidates meet the description of the skills, knowledge, and I don't have the words in front of me, abilities to do the job that you're applying for. So if we're sending down, let's say, let's just use this last class, if we tell 40 some odd people, yes, when we've given them this list, this is our list that the register that we sent, that, hey, these 43 folks have the skills, knowledge, and ability to do this, and only 13 of them pass, that makes me call into question, whoa, like that is a huge attrition rate. What can we do here? How can we work with the fire department? How can we work with these stakeholders? What are we missing here? If this is that big of an attrition rate, the folks that we're giving over to the fire department in this register that we're saying can do this work are not able to. And this has been going on now for a few years, is my understanding. So what can we do on our end to rectify that and to help with that situation? Because that's costing taxpayers millions of dollars. If you tell someone, hey, you're going to come down to drill school, you can do this job, that person's quitting their job. Depending, if they don't live in the city, they might be moving to Seattle, taking an apartment, going through this whole process, the hiring process, which is this, you got to go down and get gear and meet with people. And then you show up to drill school and find out you're not physically strong enough to pick up the ladder. That to me is a huge issue that we're hurting the folks that we're telling can get the job. We're hurting the drill school, and the drill school instructors now are dealing with this as opposed to training firefighters. They're dealing with HR now has all this paperwork to do, all because our register is submitting folks that don't have the skills, knowledge, and abilities to do the work. And it seems pretty clear that it says that we have physical standard, that we have the option here, or that we should have the ability to, or that it's on us to make sure that they're physically ready to do the job.
Well, thank you. It is really hard, and there is a very high attrition rate. There's also a fairly high dropout rate. You know better than anyone in this room, except for maybe Chief Branham, how difficult drill school is to get through. So it's some folks self-select out. And with the physical component specifically, it is an objective test that is used. The CPAT is not, there's not any discretion by the tester. I don't know the original reasons that the physical test moved from civil service to the fire department, but it is a pre-hire assessment and it is required. So nobody's showing up at drill school on the first day who didn't pass the physical aptitude test.
I suppose my concern is that if this many folks are failing out due to their physically unable to perform the job, then should we be looking at a different test? And if it was my understanding that the CPAT was done up front, I thought that was a public safety civil service thing. So that's my misunderstanding. But I suppose where I'm going with this is we're now going to tell folks from across the country that, hey, you're on this register, you are qualified to be hired now as a Seattle firefighter paramedic. But we don't have any, we're not exercising our, we're not following through with our task, which is making sure that they have the, that they have the physical ability to do the work.
I asked this question when we went out to the fire training thing.
Yes.
We had a meeting with the chiefs and
Chiefs.
yeah, and I asked this very question. I think the answer was that was sort of the CPAC was sort of a minimum thing. They would then sort of enhance through the training, and that in fact, indeed, a lot of people didn't make it, but I thought an awful lot of it was essentially people who recognized that they didn't make it until they dropped out. So yes, I was satisfied with the answer I got from them at that time, that this was a legitimate sort of starting point for that ability process.
And I don't know the CPAT, I don't administer the CPAT, I didn't develop the CPAT, but I do know that it was developed as an IAFF tool. And it is validated for the job of a firefighter. So beyond that, since it is not part of our process, I can't really speak to it, but,
I suppose my big concern is maybe less to do with the CPAP, more to do with if we're having this many folks on our register that we're submitting to the authority having jurisdiction, saying that, hey, these folks are fit to do this job, and over 50% are not. My big thing is, regardless of the CPAP, it seems to be one of our tasks as a commission to have appropriate standards for the folks that get onto that register. And this, again, if we're not doing that task, this is costing millions of dollars. It's costing families all kinds of different, you could money costs, but also other emotional costs.
Right.
The cost of when you have an attrition rate as part of a drill school that you're trying to come together as a team, and every week there's more and more people are just leaving. That is a huge problem with the morale down at the test, or the folks that are in that drill school, along with the instructors who are now caught up spending all this time with folks who are either have left, are on the bubble to get fired, or having to fill out all this HR, but it's taking away from their ability then to train the folks. And that is when I started reading this, I thought, whoa, there's two different spots here that says it's on us to be able to show that these candidates are ready. And I'm not confident that they are based on what's going on. But we're not doing our job basically as a commission.
Well, I'm not confident that we have the ability to sort of set physical standards. That would be my concern.
Okay. Well, isn't that,
we might have the authority to do that, but I just wonder how in the world, I have a hard enough time when we have these exam protests, knowing how a fire boat captain is supposed to operate. And yet, so I certainly don't have any confidence in my ability to say, to be a firefighter, you need to be able to do X, Y, and Z and do so many, carry a ladder so many feet, or, carry a hose up a building. I'm very leery of having us, utter non-experts, sort of setting those standards.
one of the reasons why we work with companies like the National Testing Network, which is our consulting company, was brought on through a request for a proposal in 2018. They also worked with us on the Seattle police officer test. We heard from Dr. Swanger. I'm sure he'd be happy to come back and talk to you, Commissioner Applegate, and the commission, about the fire team exam that we do use. And you and Chief Branham know better than any of us in this room, being a firefighter is a very hard job, and Seattle Fire Department is very selective. So I think we do a great job, as evidenced by the good work of the firefighters that we have hired and are promoted up through our ranks. I would never say that we don't have areas for improvement, but I do think we're within the requirements of the law. We're going over and above with the excellent work that this professional staff does on a daily basis.
And I also thought that meeting, I heard somebody say something about the reason we'd gone to this other physical agility test is because there were like employment concerns about some other tests we'd used, that it was discriminatory in some end, that there was a disparate impact.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's why we had to go to this one.
I think I heard that too.
I think maybe one of the things I was hoping that might come out of this, because I realize this isn't the topic that's just going to solve this thing right now. I understand that. If we don't, and I'm just speaking of Public Safety Civil Service Commission, I'm not speaking for what the department does, because what the department does for your physical testing, that's up to the department. That's out of my control, or that's not our task. But if we don't have any physical standard here, and this says that we have the ability to have a physical condition, and then also right here, special requirements. This one's pretty straightforward. The commission may prescribe such limits of age and such specific requirements, physical or otherwise, as in the commission's judgment are required by the nature of the work performed. So if you need to be able to lift the ladder, again, I'm not going into the exact test that should be used, but I suppose what I'm calling into question is, if we have this huge attrition rate, and not only is it attrition rate, but we're injuring people too by sending them down if they're not ready to perform. I don't know what the percentage of folks that go on disability for real school, but I know it's very high. we have no physical standard. Well, perhaps we could do, I was thinking back with the police interlevel testing process. We did, I think there was a due diligence report that kind of said, hey, here's the different options that are out here. Here's the different considerations. Here's what's out there that we could possibly use. Here are the pros and cons of each one. Maybe one of the things I was hoping for maybe out of this is, I don't know if a due diligence report is the exact method, but perhaps we could somehow look into, are there other tests beside, is there, maybe the question would be, is there a test that would be appropriate for the Public Safety Civil Service Commission to require as part of our register, so that we can say that, yes, these folks do have the physical condition required to do this job. And I don't know what the answer is to that. And I might have been, I don't think that I'm not going to go out there. I don't have the chops to do that, but I know that there's other tests besides the CPAP. And I'll just give you one other thing too. Again, this isn't all about the CPAP, and that's on the fire department. I believe when I applied, the CPAP was required for Public Safety Civil Service. When did that change? Anyway, a long time. Anyway, when I went to do the CPAP, the instructions I was given by everyone is, don't go fast. They have these taped lines on the ground. You have to carry things, and you raise this ladder, and you do this everything. And there's these taped lines, and they said, do not go fast. If you step on that line, if you accidentally set something down and it touches the line, or you touch things out of order in some way, you fail. And they said, you won't fail on time. You will fail if you step on the line or you go out of the bounds. So my task was, and I'm not some physical specimen, my task was go slow so I don't blow this thing. And I still passed that within multiple minutes underneath the timeline. And so I'm just sharing my experience. And I haven't looked at the validation studies and all that stuff, but if I'm told to go slow on this test, and I'm not some physical specimen, and then we have greater than 50% fail rate at our academy, it just calls in my mind, that just calls into question, like, hey, we look at this standard, and is there something more that we can do that when we provide this register, that we can say, yes, we did evaluate their physical standards, which is in here, and we can say that there's some minimum level of physical standard to be spoken on this register.
And I think this may be part of maybe a bigger philosophical question of sort of, at what point do we do a lot of screening up front so the department doesn't have to do that, versus we don't do a whole lot of screening and let them deal with. And we had the same issue when we had a meeting with interim chief Sue Czar, and about doing the testing. Her philosophy was that forget the testing, we'll weed out people using a background check. So in other words, give us everybody and we'll weed them out ourselves. Whereas we didn't think that was such a good idea. We thought we should maybe weed them out sort of ahead of time before they get to you. And so that was that struck me as sort of a philosophical question of how do we balance this? And I think that maybe this is sort of the same kind of idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, I appreciate the commission taking on the physical fitness ability of the firefighters. But no, I do. I mean, to know that you're working on this is a concern that you could, I would love to help, work with you on that. But just put the commission's mind at ease. Like, we have hired a professional that person's goal is pre-recruit training. And the pre-recruit training is relatively new over the past couple of years that they've refined that. And that has shown to be quite effective, that if people come to pre-recruit training, they have a higher chance of success in recruit school. So the department will continue to try to make advances and progress in making this a better experience for the members. I also want to say, and I know, Commissioner Applegate, the staffing crisis or the challenge for Battalion 3 and how it affects response time to your family, baseball games. I mean, the commission, you have a large role in all of this. And I do appreciate, though, that as we've come together, the department, the union, the group, as decided this is the path that is going to help shore up Battalion 3 staffing as quickly as possible. We have 3 more retirements looming in the next 6 months. We have a strong applicant pool for our internal candidates, but that goes back to a 10-month process. They won't hit the streets until, July of 2026. We have 8 right now that still have to get to the final testing in June of 2026. So I'm sorry, that group of 27. My point is that I appreciate the effort and the work that the commission has done. If it seems fast, I apologize for not announcing it formally, but this will allow us to shore up Battalion 3 as quickly as possible with candidates that are coming in with the minimum requirement that will at least allow us to start off with a baseline for us to evaluate in a public safety civil service oral board, and then in a phase 2 or an internal evaluation process for these candidates to make sure that we get competent paramedic firefighters on the street next year. So thank you.
The last piece I'll say in this, and then I'll give everyone a break from this thing. Thank you all for bearing with me here. The other thing is when I did receive the job posting on the 26th, I think is when I received it. I was reading through the language and I had some concern with the language of the job posting. There's a lot of vagueness in there. Some of it I believe was sort of not accurate as far as the duties and the descriptions. So I won't go into a point-by-point analysis of that right now, but I just wanted to raise a concern that, you know, for instance, it says if you being able to assist with stabilizing a patient prior to transport. Paramedic is not an assister. A paramedic is leading that effort. That is their job. That is their responsibility. So if you are saying the duty is to assist someone, and I don't know what Seattle Fire paramedics do, and I work in wherever, and I go, oh, I assist with this kind of thing all the time. Great, I'd like to apply. Only to find out that I don't qualify, that this is a very different role from what this says. You know, it talks about innovations and regularly doing things. Well, a lot of folks innovate mannequins. It doesn't flesh out. Is this a mannequin innovation? What is frequent? Is frequent once a month? Is this 2 innovations a year? Is this, you know, we do, I think on average 20 or something. I don't know what the numbers are, but it's extremely vague language, which leads me to believe that, hey, if I was whoever somewhere else outside the country and I read this and I think, oh, I'm going to put in an application. I think I qualify for this, only to find out, oh, actually, this is what they're looking for is very different than what's in this. Not very different, but it's different from what's written here. I have some big concerns with the way that was written up as well. And I'm not saying that this is horrible and that no one knows what they're doing. And so I'm just reading it and I'm going, well, with my subject matter expertise, I'm just looking at these things going, this doesn't fall in line with what I'm doing in my job. So how are we advertising this nationally or internationally even? And this doesn't seem to be aligned with what it is that I do on a day-to-day basis, and with the literature of this internal stuff and other things as well. So.
I mean, provide emergency medical service to the public. Paramedics do that. Administer first aid, cardiopulmonary resuscitation to injured persons. Paramedics do that. Assist in patient stabilization. You do that with medicine and your partner.
So it says assist with first aid and cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So administer. So in my mind, so when I hear cardiopulmonary resuscitation, I think of CPR, doing compressions. When I think of first aid, to say that what a firefighter, I guess in my mind, when I respond as a firefighter to someone who's been run over by a truck, I'm not there to provide first aid. I'm there to provide emergency physician level care. I'm stabilizing that patient. I'm checking. I need to take their airway. I need to take C-spine. Like that's a big difference from first aid, I guess, in my mind. The CPR, like if it said lead a cardiopulmonary resuscitation to include administering, epinephrine, procainamide, the drugs that we give, intubating every single person in CPR. Again, that is a very different description than first aid and helping with CPR, assisting with CPR. That's, I guess, where I'm getting into is the difference here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, we try to cast, the goal is to cast a wide net so we get applications so then we can have our subject matter experts evaluate them to see who the 8 to 16 people would be.
Sure.
So without going into minutiae detail and the job responsibilities, I and the team, paramedic training, everybody was comfortable in this language that it painted a broad picture to get the applicants, and that they would know, since they're already paramedics, what the responsibility was. So we could go over this word by word and pick it apart. But the goal was to cast a wide net, get the applicants, so that then our Seattle firefighter members could evaluate those applicants to make sure we have the strongest 16 candidates going forward.
And yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the work of the department here. I suppose my great concern is that, applications fall under Rule 8 and, 8.1. 8.1B, an applicant, in order to file an application for examination, the applicant must meet the requirements specified in these rules and in the official examination bulletin. And also, I have one other one here too, similar to that, but I guess where I'm going with this is on our end, not necessarily what the fire department's going to do, but on our end, if we have an application written up that says provide first aid and assist with CPR, and I go, okay, I'm an applicant, I qualify for this, so I write up an application based on the language that's in there. From a commission standpoint, if we're the ones who are providing this application, I want to make sure that the language in that application is specific enough for folks to either know that they qualify or they don't qualify. And the way that I read it, there was lots of different, not lots of it, but there was a number of circumstances where I looked at it and I said, well, this is very vague and broad. And I understand from a department perspective where you're going with that, but from our perspective, if we're the ones writing these up and making sure this is accurate, that's something I would love for the commission to be able to explore with this application and make sure that this is written up in a manner that is in line with the jobs and responsibilities that we're looking for, essentially.
We post job bulletins all the time. It is a routine part of our work. This is our staff's job. And, I think, I'm not going to repeat Chief Branham, but people need to know what the job is. And if they apply, applying it's certainly work, but it's not, causing anyone any harm if they apply and then they find out that there was something else. They have to be succinct, they have to be correct. And, we can't encompass every single duty.
There's always the possibility that someone can misinterpret a job bulletin.
Yeah.
That I can't control for what someone infers from the writing on the page. And I would also say that you're referring to a job responsibility and not a medical qualification.
Correct.
So right. So if they infer from this line what the minimum quals are, then they're not reading the job bulletin.
I suppose the big picture I'm looking at is if we're the ones writing this application, and if I, as a commissioner, can look through and go, this is very vague, this doesn't really fall in line with what I'm doing, it doesn't fall in line with what's written in these packets for recruitment. I just feel like as a commission, that's on us to make sure that it is accurate. And I realize that people are going to interpret things different ways and that nothing is perfect. However, I would just like to know if there's a difference between perfect and
right. I would go back to the stakeholder group that did go through these words line by line, which included the medical director for the PMT program at Harborview, the chief Branham, the training director, HR, PSCSC staff, labor.
Captain Wallace. Both paramedics.
My manager, Mike Nelson, and myself. So this commission was represented in those discussions, and that stakeholder group approved this language.
That is accurate. However, the commission itself, I never saw this application, and that's one of the reasons I asked for a pause is that, did you see this written in writing?
I tell you, Tom, I'm really concerned about the commission getting into the business of wordsmithing job applications. Like I tell you, in my time with the city attorney's office, the idea of a group writing a brief with the words experience of my life, one person should write it and not go back and forth forever. So yeah, I get your point, but I think that there was sufficient sort of involvement from our staff in the development of these job applications that I'm satisfied. I did really would not want to be in the business of wordsmithing every job application.
Sure.
Chair Green, I'm sorry, I really want to participate, but I really need to take a break. Is
Sure.
there a way we can have a recess?
Yeah, I was thinking about if we're done with this topic, maybe we could take like a 10-minute recess. Is that all right?
Do you mind if I just add one thought to that?
Sure.
The one thought I'll say is that, yes, I'm aware that we post job applications all the time, but this is a new job application. And we developed this new, and that's what the point I guess I'm trying to make is that I would love for the commission to be able to review this prior to this being posted. I realize that the stakeholders have done their work, but this is a new application. We don't do new applications all the time. We typically post one that's already been posted. And that's where I think that the application falls under my understanding, under the jurisdiction here of Public Safety Civil Service Commission. So that's, again, I'm not trying to get into exact granular details, but I think that it should be reviewed by the commission prior to being posted.
Prior to your time here, we have revised job classifications and job closings that did not get this level of classification, but I hear what you're saying. Okay.
Okay. So if we,
Yes. I was just gonna say, Commissioner Appleby, I appreciate you going to this extent to kind of just explain, your thought process and how you feel around the process and include the job description. But from an HR perspective, when we are given something, we look at a few things. What's the best practice path forward? And what can we do within the time frame, within the information that we have, within the resource and the capacity within the team? And we figure out the direction. If there was 2 directions, create a new classification or add it to an existing job description, we have to do a few things. First, we have to look at the responsibilities, look at the FLSA guidelines on those each individual job duties to determine where it falls, find the closest job description that it could possibly fit into and add it in the safest way possible. But again, timeline, resources, and everything is literally finding a best, safest, most comfortable path forward. And sometimes that may not be perfect, but it's our job from an HR perspective to find the safest path forward. But when it comes to FLSA guidelines, whether certain duties are exempt and non-exempt, sometimes our hands are tied and we are unable to do anything but the safest path forward, which I feel like that was definitely displayed a few times.
okay, could we recess until 1:15?
Yes.
I'm going to call the meeting back to order. So we're going to go on to police exam updates. So Rachel, if you'd like to.
Okay, and for the new commissioner, welcome. I have primary responsibility for police exams, entry level and lateral and promotional exams. And Adelaide is also on Team Blue. We have Thevia, who went down fall to attend to another meeting, and Adelaide and I are the trio that kind of primarily focus on the administration, development and administration of police exams, entry level and promotional. So that's our job, and we are also supporting Team Red. As Yoshiko labeled us this last week, which I thought was so appropriate, which we have a firefighter exam coming up, and so for purposes, whenever we have a large exam, everyone is all in, right? We're all working and helping each other with the administration of the exam to ensure success. So she's deemed us for the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks as Team Purple. So like I live, yes. Team Purple. So yes, I'm appropriately dressed as Team Purple. So with regard to the police report specifically, we had a lateral entry exam this last Saturday, and it was part 2 of the test. So for lateral entry, they have to participate in the Frontline National and PSCSC tests as entry-level folks do. But then there's another layer. They have a oral board that's specific to lateral entry that they have to participate in. Entry-level folks no longer have an oral board. Police department used to administer that, but they do not. And with regard to entry level, I would like for Adelaide to talk about entry level because there's a lot of exciting news happening at the entry level front.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Yeah, and I'm sure you've all seen in the news, 2024 was like a really big year in terms of application and testing activity for a police officer. We had over 4,300 total applications, so that's a combination of over 4,000 entry level and then about 200 lateral applicants. And that is the highest that we've had since the early 2010s. So it's super exciting. And it was more than 2 times the amount of applications that we had last year in 2023. Something I did want to call out, which hasn't been in the news, is that we processed about 1,000 more test takers than we had last year. So in 2023, we had 670 test takers, and in 2024, we had 1,655. And so I want to do a shout out to the team, everyone who supports us. Next small, yeah, and then, you know, across all of our eligibility lists, we referred over 1,000 candidates over to us. And that is the highest number that we've had on record since we started tracking this data in 2012. Yeah. And so far this year, we're remaining pretty high with applications, about 15.7 per day, and we'll be producing our next register tomorrow.
Kind of underestimate how positive that news is. I know you want to read the news and keep aware of these issues, but like it has been a turbulent year, but I'm so happy that 2024 was able to go out and that it's maintaining. That's really incredible. Yes, thank you, Adelaide.
The additional staff that the commission was allotted has allowed for more contact. So we're reaching out to candidates repeatedly and trying to encourage them to follow through with the testing process. And that seems to be Thevia is a large part of that as well, sending out communications to candidates every week. So text messages and if that's what the candidate selects, or emails. So that's been working really well. We have 2 promotional exams on the police side this year: police captain, police lieutenant. Night before last, the filing period closed for both of those exams, and we had 29 for each. 29 applicants for police captain, 29 applicants for police lieutenant. Did I hear from?
Yes.
So police captain, that's a big number, and there's only been 1 other time in my tenure where we had 30. That was in 2011. That actually went through the test, and it's a very it's a different process for police captain. We don't have them do a multiple choice written exam, but alternatively, we have them go through 6 separate exercises. We bring in outside assessors so that it's not who knows who, but really we have a very neutral set of assessors from other West Coast police departments. We also have a civilian panelist, and we'll talk more about that as we get into the administration of the task, because I do have lots more information to receive and get through today, but 29 for captain. And then lieutenant, that's kind of on the low side. We would have liked to have seen that number be a little bit higher, but it's within range. We will be administering those promotional exams both in March and April. The written exam for police lieutenant will happen on March 7th. The oral board process, they have to take and pass that multiple choice written exam. Once they do that, they're scheduled to participate in the assessment exercises for police lieutenant. That will happen the last week of April through May 2nd, April 28th through May 2nd. And then for police captain, it's from April 4th through the 12th. I don't know, because of the number of applicants, I'm trying to figure out the logistics and scheduling to make sure we don't have our assessors working 12-hour days. So we're working on that. But it looks good, and all of our exam applicant numbers are pretty healthy right now.
Thank you. So Yoshika, you want to go into the fire camp updates?
Joe, you
Yeah.
Rachel.
I introduced myself earlier, but I'm Yoshiko Grace Matsuyo. I'm the fire exams administrator. And I don't know if you've been at the table before, but this is Amy Jo Snowberger. Yes, who is essential to making sure that we get everything ready for all of our entry level and promotional exams this year. As you heard earlier, we're in the process of doing the application and testing window for lateral entry firefighter paramedic. We have around 36 applications so far. Candidates have until January 28th to file an application, and the testing window closes on January 31st. We usually have we'll call it a lagging testing window. So if someone goes to apply on that Friday night at 5 o'clock, they will have an opportunity for at least some time to go ahead and schedule a test, because they can't do tests like on demand that instant. And so if they apply on that very last deadline, we try and give them a few days, if not a week or two, in order to contact our testing vendor, schedule an exam, and then go to that exam. It's about a 2.5 hour exam, and so it's not something they could just do right then after they hit the application button. In the midst of that, we have a small thing called the firefighter oral boards happening right now. So I don't know if you recall, but we had our application period in October. It runs for about 2 months, and then we have a testing period that runs about 10 weeks. As a result, we had 3,800 applications. We had around 2,400 people take the exam, and then we made the decision to carry forward about 1,500 people to oral boards. So typically during this time period, you will not see me again until March, because we are going to be at the Radisson Hotel down in SeaTac, within walking distance of the baggage claim, which is really exciting for me, because about a third of our applications come from out of state. So that's still a really high number of in-state folks who go through that entry-level process. But in case you're flying in and then want to fly out, you can in fact do that in the same day with our location next to the SeaTac airport. We do roughly 9 panels a day, and they see about, I wish Miranda was here, around 10 to 11 oral boards. So typically we try and get through 115 oral boards in a day. So that's a bit of a production line, but we are scheduled to work Wednesday through Saturday from the January 22nd to about February 8th, I believe. That is supported by NTN, our testing vendor, of course, who helps us with the development of the oral board questions, the scoring criteria, and the administration, the scoring, and the statistical analysis that happens afterwards. We are still on target in order to try and meet a registered deadline of publishing that register at about March 1st. So
Please say just a couple words about the civilian panelists.
oh yeah, of course, thank you. I would say about we started talking about it right away in about 2016, but it took, I think, at least a year of discussion for us to get to the point where we were able to implement the idea of having a civilian on our oral boards for entry-level fire. So in the past, there were multiple configurations, but in the most recent, like mid 2000s to about 2015, the configuration was you would take a written exam, pen and paper on a desk, and then you would go through 2 sets of oral boards. The first set was with a panel of 3 entry-level, like firefighters, and then your second oral board would have been with a panel of officers, so lieutenants, captains, battalion chiefs. And so they did those 3 components to the civil service exam before getting on the register. When Chief Scoggins came in, we did an RFP. We went out and got a new vendor for our entry-level test, and he also had asked us, the commission, if we had considered ever having civilians on the oral boards, and we said, no, we have not considered that in the past. And at the time, we really struggled with the high volume of candidates that we have to figure out where we might get community volunteers to come sit in a room for 8 hours a day to assess 100 people. And so I would give credit where it's due to Dave Wright, who was our previous supervisor here in public safety exams, where he went and tapped civilian city employees who are involved in our racial social justice initiative here at the city. So folks who already have a level of equity training and involvement, have already volunteered in some way in their time around the city to these types of issues. So we went out and found, I think at that time, around 75 city employees who volunteered, and with the blessing of their department, were trained in how to do evaluations for oral boards. We went through a minimizing bias training as well, and then reduced the number of oral boards from 2 to 1, and have 2 firefighters, which could be a firefighter or an officer, and 1 civilian on each panel. So we've done that. This is a 3rd cycle of doing that. And so we have to basically kind of get to 2 tracks where we recruit the SFD participants and raters from the SFD side. And then our office is responsible for doing the advertising, vetting, training of all the panelists on the civilian side. And I think having them be city employees solves lots of issues for us. They get compensated from their department. They're not just like volunteers. They already have familiarity with the fire department. They're not like, you know, from different parts of the country. They have familiarity because they work here already. And it really has been wonderful in these past 4 training sessions that we just did in the last 2 weeks to see their level of engagement and how much the civilians really care about participating in this process.
We have to thank their departments for loaning us those volunteer employees and paying their compensation while they're working to help the fire department hire new firefighters. Absolutely.
So yes, and then we are hoping to, again, get all that scoring back, and the addition of veterans preference scoring criteria, and then have that registered published by March. In addition, we have 2 promotional examinations, and Rachel just alluded to the fact that our application period just ended yesterday. I have 2 fire promotional exams that are happening right now. One is the fire lieutenant. We had 80 applications come through for fire lieutenant, and the second one is fireboat engineer, and we had 5 applications come in for that, which is, both of those numbers are what you would expect. They're not unusual. So I was happy to see those. I don't have twice as many as normal like Rachel does. So that's good for us. And then in the stage of the process, so while that application period is coming, we work on the exam development. So many times when you're not like standing around with a clipboard and a stopwatch, people sometimes imagine that we have a lot of off time or downtime. But in reality, we're developing each set of oral boards each year. So there is a committee of subject matter experts from the fire department that also includes Chief Branham, who is our chair of the promotional development committees, lieutenants who come together to develop the oral boards for lieutenant. They also review the exam bibliography and approve the questions that actually go on to the written exam. And the same is happening right now for fireboat engineer. Fireboat engineer is kind of offset so that we're not trying to do all of these in the same month. So lieutenant goes first in our calendar. The written exam is in the second week of March, along with the it's like a lieutenant show. So we have police lieutenant and fire lieutenant in the same weekend for written exam. And then we have to stagger the oral boards. So in this case, the oral boards for fire lieutenant will happen in the third week of May, so May 19th, something like that. And then fireboat offset so that we have time to do all of those things. Their test is in June, and their practical examination where they go out and pull levers and push buttons on the fireboat happens in September.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Next item is fire and police staffing.
Yes, welcome, Hannah Costin.
Hi, yeah, I'm Hannah. I'm with the Seattle Fire Department HR team. Year end 2024, we had 93 separations. That was 65 non-recruits and 28 recruits. We had 70 hires in total, 39 from one recruit class, 30 from another, and then one rehire. Our current authorized uniform budget pocket is 1,111, and our current staffing is 982. And then mid 2025, we are going to add one lieutenant mid-year to support the MIH program. So that's going to increase our budget pocket count by one. We are currently hiring for the February 2025 recruit class. That's recruit class 122. At this time, we've extended 36 final offers and we're still waiting on 6 medicals. So if those go well, we can expect to start with a class of 45. And then Yoshiko already spoke to the 2025 register, but once the register is established in March, we're going to be using that to hire a recruit class in August of 2025, and then an EMT course in the fall, which will lead into another recruit class in February of 2026. And then we do anticipate 9 uniformed retirements in January of 2025. So we're already we're already looking at some separations coming up.
Great, thank you.
One quick question, Hannah, before you go. How many folks graduated drill school in 2024? Do you have that number?
Yes, give me a second. $44.
Okay, thank you.
We have Mr. McKenzie for the police department.
Hi there, Alan McKenzie with the Seattle Police Department. We had 83 separations and 84 hires in 2024. So far this year, we've had 5 hires and 3 separations. I think that's the information you asked me to provide.
How many budget pockets, uniform or in the public safety civil service, if you know, does SPD have for 2025?
I think that number is 1,076.
Are those all funded or does that include
Those
authorized?
are budgeted. Authorized would be, I don't know what the authorized number is. You know, last year it was 1274 or something, 1277, but the authorized budgeted pockets number I have is 1076.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. So moving on, the Executive Director of Budget and Departmental Updates.
Okay, yes, thank you, Commissioner Green. I don't have a budget update yet. The 2025 allocated budget has not yet been loaded into our Questica and PeopleSoft systems. We'll be doing that in the coming weeks, and I will have a budget report for you in 2025. But the budget has grown, been increased quite a bit for 2025 with the reorganization of the safety testing unit officially and budgetarily into the CIV department. So it'll look quite different. I'm happy to continue putting the year-over-year allocation and spending for you, but I'm not sure, you'll decide whether that's useful or not. It's kind of it'll be a bit of an apples to oranges comparison. As for the department update, I'll keep it quick as well. We are hoping to do and planning to do a lot of outreach on behalf of the Civil Service Commission and employees in that system this year with Mike Nelson having been hired to be a full-time manager of the Public Safety Exams Unit. It does, it will free Sarah Butler up to do some of that operational and departmental internal city work that she's been she's been doing it, but helping on a lot of public safety exams issues. So we're excited to get back to that, as well as looking at our race and social justice goals as we come together as this new department, doing some internal work to figure out how we want to run things, and it's going to be really fun and really interesting. We had a lot of update on the lateral firefighter paramedic, so I won't go into that, though that has been a body of work. And it kind of leads into the case status update, which is a big body of work that this commission has supported in 2025.
Sure, you want to talk about that?
Yes. All right, I'm going to actually go to the case status report, which is on page 18. That's on page 18 of your packet. All right, so this document, page 18, has all of the sort of live current cases before the Public Safety Civil Service Commission. You have seen on your case status report in previous months, and Commissioner Mays may have seen if she looked at previous packets, Officer Willis's appeal. That's Officer Willis from SPD. He was suspended. We conducted a pre-hearing conference, and we have another status conference scheduled for Officer Willis coming up later this month on the 24th. So that one's moving along. Officer England, I believe we recently heard from him that he is going to proceed with the Public Safety Civil Service Commission process in his appeal. He's a Seattle police officer as well. He is appealing a suspension. So we'll be scheduling the pre-hearing conference in his case. Officer Hill, you all know we did have Officer Hill's appeal actually scheduled. However, the city attorney's office let us know that the attorney who was handling that matter, Catherine Seelig, will be leaving that office, and they'll need to reassign that case to a new attorney, which will require a postponement. So more to come in Officer Hill's case on that new attorney's when they were assigned, and then his attorney, has put in some notices of unavailability as well. So more to come on that. But the most recent appeal that was filed was former Officer Dave, I think I'm saying that right, versus the Seattle Police Department. This is a discharge. He was separated on January 10th. And he did file a timely appeal with the Public Safety Civil Service Commission. He has indicated that he is not waiting for his union to decide whether it will take the grievance, and he does wish to proceed with the Public Safety Civil Service Commission process. And we will work with him or his representative and the Seattle Police Department to schedule a pre-hearing conference in that matter. So lots coming up for you three.
Great.
Just a real quick question. On the final column here, it says presiding. Is the director and the executive director's up to the board the same?
No. Yes, director and executive director is the same.
Okay.
I preside over the pre-hearing processes, and the commission presides over the hearing itself.
And that's why PSCSC, they already had the first pre-hearing for Officer Hill, even though it needs to be redone, but that's why PSCSC is here, is they already completed the first step. I guess I'm just curious.
Sure, yeah, no, I'm happy to explain. So, I mean, it may be a little preliminary to say PSCSC, although I'm under the commission too.
Sure.
Though I'm not a commissioner, but, so what I presided is the commission presiding. It is before the commission.
Okay.
But I handle the pre-hearing processes. So since this was scheduled for hearing and we didn't anticipate there would be any more pre-hearing motions or anything like that, though there very easily could be. And I would probably preside over those. I would, if I had a question or, I always consult with Joe or Ann, our attorneys. But typically I preside over all pre-hearing processes.
Okay.
But, it's just a function of who sits in the chair. Teresa and I are supporting those hearings. Joe and Ann are supporting those hearings. And y'all won't be left out on the cold. We're always going to be here through the final stages. So don't worry at all about that.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the action items. I think the only one we have scheduled is for setting our meeting dates, and that's on page 34 and 35. They're typically on the third Thursday of the month at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, and I think Teresa is always a good person to lead this discussion.
Okay, so trying to make it so that it was not as confusing because I did speak with a few commissioners as far as their availability on the third Thursday. And so I did give multiple options on scheduling the meeting, either keeping it as the third Thursday at 10 a.m. or looking at some alternate dates. There are some hard and fast dates that do need to be kept on the calendar due to exam protest reviews. Potential exam protest reviews. So, and when we say potential, it means that we have to keep the date in the event that a candidate brings a protest before the commission for an exam that they took. So, how would you like to proceed?
And in June, were we thinking about the 19th, the third Thursday?
No, so June, the 2 dates there, June 12th and is a fire exam. So it's mainly based on the fact that the room is not available, but we could still have the meeting, but we could have it at the boards and commissions room at City Hall.
Yes. Sorry, you have to go again. Juneteenth is also a holiday, and so we're not available to meet on June 19th.
Gotcha.
So that, but we do need to have a protest review if needed in June. So I would propose that you choose an alternate date that would be the 26th if possible. Or you could also do June 19, 18.
No, so not 19.
I mean, sorry, June, I meant 20, 18, 17, 16. But we have to have time to put together our appeal and an appeal packet. And then get a response back from you in case that there is an appeal in a timely manner. And so earlier in the month could also work, but you can't meet on the 19th.
So could we say on the 26th of June? Is that right?
It would actually be my preference that you do it earlier because we also have work that goes on after the appeals where we have to do all the grading. We don't do any of the grading or scoring until after appeals. And this is in the hypothetical that there are appeals that you all need to hear. And so it's also possible that if we get none, maybe you cancel this meeting or you move it to a different date. But earlier would be better so that I could go on to the next phase that's needed to produce the register by August 15th.
Yeah.
So how about June 12th?
I can do June 12th.
It says fire exam on that page.
I'm not sure where that is on the calendar. Let me check.
Get on my phone. Is that okay if I get on my phone?
Sure.
Yeah.
Calendar.
I don't see an exam on June 12th, but there is a protest period that we're having. So
For a fire exam.
for a fire exam, but it'll be a very small group, that's for fireboat engineer, so it'll maximum 5 people will be here. I could possibly do both with the help of Miranda and maybe Joe.
So 12th would work.
It's possible. I do have a conflict, but we can make it work.
You all can make that work.
Sure, June 12th.
To be
Okay,
clear, what you're doing is you're setting the regular meeting schedule for the
Right,
year.
right.
Which will be posted on the website, and if any time you need to cancel, other meetings or special meetings, you can do that.
okay. So I would move that we adopt this schedule of, on page 34.
So I think there's one more off schedule one, is that right or no?
I can't make the regular October meeting.
The October 16th meeting, Andrea is in training. And the alternate date proposed is October 23rd.
And we will have potential appeals in October after the fireboat engineer practical exam, which is in early September. So I do need, again, to have a commission.
It's also possible to have a meeting without me.
Well,
I have not had any yet, but yeah.
I would prefer you be there for an appeal, but
Okay, well, let me pull up my calendar. We'll find some good dates. And Commissioner Holiday, you have your calendar up too, right? Okay.
23rd is the alternate date.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe we could do it the 20th. I'd be happy to do it. Is that really enough for you?
oh yeah, October less time sensitive because I have all of November before the registry goes out to September.
Great.
All right, so 23rd of October. Okay,
I mean, there's an extra August in there that somehow crept in
Oh, yeah.
after October.
I love August though. It's a great month. We should do it twice.
I'll do August twice.
all right,
Thank you for taking our exam schedule into account.
sure.
I have a question. Yeah, so Thursdays typically don't work for me, but I'm looking to change it, right? Is there a way we can look at like February, March and April, doing it like a Wednesday or a Friday, just for those,
Works for me. It's fine.
just for those months? I think I have it kind of planned out after April.
So if you look at this, the additional page with this, again, you would have the
Any of those days,
Wednesday and the third Friday.
The only thing I might add, if that's okay, is for February, that won't impact our calendar at all, but we do have 2 written exams in March, and we need time to do the protest period and appeals packet before we meet. And so if we could do March later and not a bunch earlier, or just a day on either side of the 20th, that'd be good. I guess I'm saying is don't change it too much.
How about the 19th? Is the third Wednesday?
March 19th,
Mhm.
is that all right? Okay. And then April,
What's the February date?
the 19th.
Yeah.
Yeah, February 19th, March 19th, April, there, 18th,
Yes.
18th, okay,
So February 19th, March 19th, so what's the April?
April 18th.
Do those all work for you, Commissioner Applegate?
Yeah, I'm just checking here. Thanks for asking. I know the March date were February. Yeah, February works. April will work.
18th,
I'll be remote, but I'll be out of town those.
Okay.
I'm gonna be out of town on all those dates.
and then we have May 15th, June 12th, July 17th, August 21st, September 18th, October 23rd, November 20th, and December 18th. So I would propose that we have those dates.
And then in November, that is when the joint meeting also needs to be held. So we tried to rotate it, have it with the CSC meeting, which theirs is on Monday, but it seems that the Thursdays work better. So what we've done is we've had the joint meeting early at 9 o'clock. And then we follow immediately with the public safety meeting. So if the November 20th works, then you can leave that for both meetings.
Maybe we could even move the Civil Service Commission meeting to that date, let them go first, then joint meeting, then PSCSC.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
Okay. Moving right along. Are there any old or
You're
new?
gonna vote on that, Bill?
Oh, actually, I make a motion that we approve that schedule of February 19th, March 19th, April 18th, May 15th, June 12th, July 17th, August 21st, September 18th, October 23rd, November 20th, and December 18th.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, great.
It doesn't have to be whatever. If there's all of you will get on.
All right.
Thank you.
Any old or new business? So now we are going to go into executive session for just a bit. So as presiding officer, I am announcing that the Public Safety and Civil Service Commission will now convene executive session. The purpose of this executive session is to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency to litigation or potential litigation related to proposed action or current practice pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1. It's expected the commission will be in executive session until 2 o'clock, 2:05, 2 o'clock.
Or maybe like 1:58.
1:58.
I complained that.
All right, sure.
But if that's enough time.
Yeah, sure. So then we stand adjourned until 2 o'clock.
And then.
Then you'll come back and then you'll adjourn.
Sorry, Amy Joseph, sorry.
Okay, we're back on the record now, 158. We've had our executive session. There isn't even anything else on the agenda, so I would move that we adjourn.
Second that motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Oh, 159.
Thank you.
All right, we're out of here.